When you are in bad mood, check timestamps for your zodiac sign. Aries. When Aries is in a bad mood, their frustration bubbles over in intense ways. They get snappy, irritable, and sometimes downright explosive. Everything from a slow driver to a crooked picture frame can set them off. While they act like they want to be alone, deep down, they're craving someone to just sit beside them and remind them to breathe. They're often misunderstood because they mask emotional overwhelm with anger. They don't like admitting they're hurt, so the sadness leaks out as rage. If they trust you enough to cry in front of you, know that you've seen a rare and raw version of them. Taurus. When Taurus is in a bad mood, it's like a storm quietly rolling in. They don't explode immediately, but you'll feel the shift in their energy. The little things start to irritate them. Loud chewing, the ticking of a clock, someone breathing too loud. They bottle things up until it becomes unbearable, and then it all hits at once. Tears may fall, but not in front of everyone. Vulnerability is something they protect fiercely. Their stubbornness intensifies during these moods, and even if they know they're wrong, they won't admit it until they've cooled down. Apologies must be sincere, because once they're hurt, they remember it forever. Gemini. When Gemini is in a bad mood, it's hard to tell at first. They might try to mask it with humor or sarcasm, but there's an undeniable edge in their tone. If you push them too far, their words become weapons, cutting and clever. Conversations turn sharp, and suddenly everything feels like a debate. They withdraw when overwhelmed, needing space to mentally sort through their tangled emotions. You'll notice them getting quiet in social settings or zoning out completely. They hate feeling trapped in a bad mood and will do everything to mentally escape it. But if you're close enough, they may open up and let you in on what's really going on behind the cool exterior. Cancer. Cancer doesn't like to show anger openly, so they bottle it up until it becomes too overwhelming. When they finally snap, it's usually a mix of tears, yelling, and emotional withdrawal. They can be intensely passive-aggressive, making subtle comments that sting more than outright insults. You'll notice their mood shift in waves. One minute they're icy, the next they're crying. They won't always tell you what's wrong, expecting you to just know. Once hurt, they crawl into their shell, ignore texts, and retreat emotionally. Comfort helps, but only if it comes from someone they trust deeply. Otherwise, they just wall themselves off from the world until the mood passes. Leo. When Leos are in a bad mood, their entire presence changes. The usual warmth and charisma fades, and they go eerily quiet. They won't laugh at your jokes, won't initiate conversations, and may give cold, short answers. Their pride makes them pretend they're fine, but their energy betrays them. Only a select few people can comfort them, and those people need to tread lightly. Leos can snap if they feel their frustration isn't being acknowledged. They lash out not to hurt others, but because they feel deeply misunderstood. The best thing to do? Let them stew, and then come back with empathy and space for their emotions. Virgo. When Virgo is in a bad mood, their emotions are quietly intense. They won't announce that they're upset, but the shift is obvious in their demeanor. Their tone gets short, their sarcasm sharpens, and their patience wears thin. They become hyper-focused on small imperfections or tasks to distract themselves, but it only adds to their irritation. You'll notice them cleaning obsessively, nitpicking details, or working late, not to be productive, but to avoid their emotions. Virgos often refuse to admit they're bothered until the pressure builds. They don't want to be a burden, so instead of venting, they stew in silence. Their bad mood is their armor, until they finally let it down for someone who truly listens. Libra. Don't make Libras repeat themselves when they're angry. Don't ask them useless questions or try to force a conversation. They'll either go completely quiet or give one-word responses that drip with passive aggression. They shrug, sigh dramatically, or roll their eyes, trying to keep the peace while internally boiling. They desperately want space, yet as soon as people pull away, they feel lonely and unloved. They're torn between wanting everyone to leave them alone and needing someone to show they care. This internal contradiction makes them snappy, reactive, and sometimes louder than you'd expect. Underneath it all, they just want to feel heard and understood, even if they don't ask for it outright. Scorpio. Scorpio in a bad mood is a storm of intensity, even if they seem composed on the outside. They become visibly irritated by the smallest things, slamming doors, short answers, and withering looks are all part of their emotional vocabulary. While they might seem strong, frustration can also bring out tears they desperately try to hide, which only infuriates them more. They're passive-aggressive by default, but can become fiercely confrontational if pushed too far. Scorpios hold on to resentment tightly, and if you ignore or minimize their feelings, it deepens the wound. What hurts most is when someone dismisses their emotions. They crave someone who listens without judging. Underneath the anger is a desire to be understood and emotionally safe again. Sagittarius. They get angry, but they don't always show it right away. Instead, they try to mask their mood with sarcasm or jokes until something small pushes them over the edge. That's when the fiery rage comes out. They'll suddenly snap, wanting to argue or physically remove themselves from everyone. Their patience becomes razor thin. They act distant and cold, but inside they're wrestling with feelings they'd rather avoid. They won't want to talk about it and will actively avoid anyone who tries to pry. Their tone gets sharp, their laughter disappears, and their usual sunny vibe turns stormy fast. They pretend they don't care, but they're secretly hoping someone will chase after them and calm the storm. Capricorn. Capricorns get scary when they're in a bad mood, not because they yell, but because of how cold and detached they become. They'll take their anger out on the people closest to them, even if they're not the ones at fault. They don't mean to hurt anyone, but they bottle things up until they're at their limit. When that happens, even a minor inconvenience will set them off. They hate appearing vulnerable, so instead of venting, they shut down emotionally. They'll pretend everything's fine while internally seething. You won't always know they're mad, but you'll feel it. Their silence becomes heavy, their glances colder. They'll distance themselves, hoping to get over it quietly, even if it's eating them alive inside. Aquarius. When Aquarius is in a bad mood, their normally cool and collected demeanor can flip fast. They shut down emotionally, retreating into silence or giving the cold shoulder without warning. They don't enjoy conflict, but if someone pushes their buttons, especially invading their space, they can unexpectedly lash out, verbally or emotionally. They internalize frustration so often that when it finally boils over, it feels messy and confusing, even to them. While they may not always express it outwardly, inside they're overwhelmed and unsure of how to process what they're feeling. What they need most is space, understanding, and a moment to decompress in solitude. Pushing them for answers too soon will only prolong their stormy mood. Pisces. Pisces rarely shows outright anger, but when they're in a bad mood, it runs deep. They retreat into themselves, often replaying events or words over and over in their minds. Though soft-spoken, they can become sharp-tongued and sarcastic when they're hurt. They'll try to act unbothered, but their sensitivity betrays them. Tears come easily if the emotional weight becomes too much to carry. While they usually forgive, they never forget, and that emotional memory can shape how they treat you in the future. When upset, Pisces doesn't always want advice. They want someone to sit with them, offer quiet support, and let them process their pain without judgment. Thank you for watching the video, and let us know your thoughts in comments box below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to get all the updates.